We're here for the Utilities Committee meeting. It's Monday, March 20th, 6:30 p.m. Please call the roll.
Councilors Dobos?
Here.
Valakir?
Here.
McAuliffe? Hushane? Roy?
Here.
In accordance with Massachusetts open meeting law, is anybody videotaping or recording this meeting? Seeing none. Item number 1, Eversource Gas of Massachusetts hereby requested to be granted a location and permission to install and maintain 4,711 feet of 2-inch IP plastic gas main on Chicopee Street, Emerson Street, Erwin Street, Tortelliot Avenue, Lucretia Avenue, Riverview Place, Charbonneau Terrace, Rivers Avenue, Adams Street, Leslie Street, and Blanche Street, with such laterals and service connections as it may now or subsequently find necessary. Is Eversource here? Oh, you can come up. Yeah, I'm sorry, I butchered some of these names here.
Well, I think you just missed.
I have.
Sure, just say your name and your address, sir, and what your proposal says.
Yeah. Brian Macrollo, 225 Roosevelt Ave in Springfield, representing Eversource. So pretty much exactly what was just referenced, pretty much running gas mains off the side streets on Chicopee Street. Chicopee Street will only be doing service work. There's an existing gas main down Chicopee. This retires an existing low pressure system we have fed off the Olivine at Chicopee Street regulator station. Go out there now, there's a below ground structure that cuts it to low pressure. This is to retire that and bring it all up to the new current 60-pound system.
Go ahead, Councilor Valakir, have any questions?
Yeah, thank you. I didn't know if there might be some neighbors that might be here that might have some questions or concerns.
Sure. Is anybody from the public here for the item number 1 regarding Eversource?
And vote on Zoom, is there any?
I'm sorry, anybody on Zoom? Go ahead, Councilor Valakir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, yeah. Excuse me, sir, when, 2 questions for you. When will this project be starting, and when is the estimated time of completion?
Yeah, so we plan to start in May with the approval and approval from DPW. And then duration right now is 117 construction days, so business days. That's with one crew. Depending on how the city works, we could bring a second crew to shorten up that time frame. But
okay, as a follow-up question, how are you notifying citizens that are in these particular exact order that you're going to follow with the project, or how is that going to work?
yep, so our contractor will send out letters to every single resident, gas customer and not affected with this project prior to starting. So before that, everything goes out, and then usually a week or so before, door knockers go out to notify of the project. We let the contractor kind of dictate which way they go. They're a little better at picking which route to take, so they kind of set the schedule more.
And one final question, please. You're going to need a police presence, or how are you going to handle that?
Yeah, police detail for all this work. We know, we've also talked with the engineering department. They have some work on Chicopee Street, I think, installing some pedestrian crossings. So we're working to them to work around their schedule to not interfere with that at all. So.
Yeah, I had a similar concern as Councilor Valakir. Last time Eversource had some issues in Ward 9 with the notifications. Right. So as long as the notifications, I think last time they sent a notification out as soon as they got the approval, and then there was not door knockers given out after that. So that's just my request, is that please make sure you try to notify people right before the work is done. Maybe we can make that a requirement in the approval.
Yeah, I just want to apologize. So during the transition, we kind of lost a couple of things that we used to do. So we're trying to pick that back up to kind of get that notification out there.
Other questions?
You good? Any other questions?
I just want to thank Councilor Dobos for bringing that issue up about the notification, because that became a real issue in Ward 9. And we literally had to go around door to door to let people know what was going on there. I think they even had the wrong year on the notice. So it was really confusing. So I'm glad that Eversource is addressing that problem. Thank you, Councilor Dobos.
If there's no other questions,
I'll
move to tentatively approve.
Motion made, seconded to tentatively approve.
Councilors Dobos,
Yes.
Valakir,
Yes.
McAuliffe, Kushein, Roy.
Yes. Don't, but I'll take yours, seeing as how it's right here. It's got a fancy new pen from Counselor Ozigorowski.
Yeah, we all set. Thank you, sir.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
What happened to Dan?
The vote is 3 favorable, 2 absent, to go to the full board at the next city council meeting.
Make a motion to take number 3 out of order, because Dan, I think, is still researching too.
Yeah, motion made and seconded to take item number 3 out of order. I know, the viewing public is here for number 2. We're just waiting for city council president and, Frank Laflamme, and waiting for our attorney, Dan Garvey. And we're waiting for some other, city hall staffers that were invited to this hearing. Item number 3, be ordered that the issue of excessive resident lighting be referred to the Utilities Committee. This was referred, I'm sorry, can we take a vote to take item 3 out of order?
Okay. Councilors Dobos,
Yes.
Valakir,
Yes.
McAuliffe, Kushein, Roy.
Yes.
Be it ordered that the issue of excessive resident lighting be referred to the Utilities Committee. As the filer of this motion has also, stepped out. Thank you. I apologize to the public. Councilor Costello, I'll refer, this order to you.
Item number 3.
Thank you. I've gotten some concerns from residents in Ward 9, actually 3 of them within a week and a half, in regards to lighting in their backyards that go into other people's property. So in other words, you're in one lot, and the guy next door to you or the guy behind you has put up some lighting that's extremely bright. It goes right into their house, and it interferes with their quality of life because the lights are always on. Never shuts off. So the backyard is lighted for the person that has the lighting, their needs, but it impacts the negativity of the life for other people, because now they've got constant lighting. The ironic thing is, I was watching a show, I don't know why, from Newfoundland, and they have a major problem there. That this has become a problem, that people are now putting up lights that impacts their neighbors, and there's no darkness for some people. They have to get shades, they have to adjust their schedules. And I had 3 complaints in, like I said, a week and a half. So I'd like to see what we can do. Maybe we could get something from the electric light department. Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead, Councilor Valakir.
Yeah, through the chair. Excuse me, Counselor. Could you say this is isolated to some particular streets or areas?
No, it's in several areas in Ward 9. It's not only one specific area, but it's like one street is off of James Street, another street is off of Jacob Street. And I'm just concerned about backyard lighting that's excessive for neighbors that constantly get that light into their home. I don't know if anybody else has had that problem, but
This is floodlighting?
it's like a floodlight, yeah. I'll give you an example. There's one on Blanchard Street. He indicated to me, the person that lives on Blanchard Street indicated to me that the guy that lives behind him, that light's always on.
Yeah, attorney, not to put you on the spot, is there anything that we can do to, and through ordinance or, some other means to address this issue?
There is. So I did speak with the building commissioner, and the building commissioner does have the authority to go out and ask people to obviously make sure that you don't shine light onto your neighboring property. He has the authority. So if you provide the names and addresses, I spoke to him and he said he would be more than happy to either visit and or write letters. So he does have the authority already to do that.
So there is an existing ordinance already?
Okay, so then,
Under
I'm
the building code, yep.
So then we're able to deal with this as is.
Correct. If you notify the building department, they will take care of it.
Now, there's no need to adjust the ordinance at all for this particular issue?
When I spoke to Frank, he said he had the tools that he needed. Now, if that changes, I'll certainly bring it to your attention, but when I spoke to Mr. Boron, he said he has the tools currently to deal with that issue.
Okay, thank
So
you.
he
Thank
needs
you, Councilor Roy,
names and
for that
addresses.
suggestion.
Go ahead, Councilor Zagorowski.
Through the chair to Ms. Costello, did you approach any of these residents about turning their lights down or adjusting their sensors?
No, the only people that I spoke to were the people that were making complaints. And like I said, Councilor Zagorowski, it was amazing. 10 days, I got 3 complaints. One was on Blanchard Street, one was on Green Street, and remember I was trying to get you the name of the resident,
Right.
and then the other one was near Jacob Street.
The reason I asked you that is that I had a problem in my neighborhood with one neighbor. I walked across the street, asked him to turn it down. He did right away.
Did he?
No problem at all.
I do think on one of the issues, the neighbor who was affected by the excess lighting did approach the guy that had the lights, and it wasn't friendly. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Costello, would you like us to refer this to the building department, or are you okay with approaching him on your own?
I would like to refer it as a paper trail to the building department so that I can give the building department the addresses of the person that is using the excess lighting. If you don't mind, I think that that's a good way to follow through on a paper trail.
Is there anybody else? Go ahead, Councilor Laflamme.
Yeah, I think I have the same concerns with spotlights because dome lights for security, everybody has them. Everybody throughout the city has them for security, whether it be Ring or other brands. But we had this problem, Derek, if you remember, with the trucking company
Yes.
up on Burnett Road, with excessive lighting from their parking lot. But we worked with them and they adjusted them. Spotlights, but dome lights are usually, they have the right to protect. According to the code, I looked at the code, Dan, says they have the right to light up their whole property if they want, but not excessively like a spotlight or that. But like a Ring has it directly down so they see, the lights. And it comes with that brand. They come with that, and that's under the state code has those as approval for residential use. But I agree if they're directly affecting someone where they can't see, they may get a shadow because I get my neighbor's shadow on my property, but I can live with that. But it can't be like a street light, blowing where they have their spot or their flood. The floods go lower, the spot goes directly straight out. That's what affects a lot of people. So let the building department look at it. I agree with that, as Dan said, because I did pull up the code today and looked at it myself. And we cannot make a law that says, ordinance that says they can't have lighting in their backyard on their own personal property. But we can do it not to affect other people in general. No different than a street light.
Thank you, Councilor Laflamme.
Thank you. Anybody else on item number 3? Anybody from the audience or anybody from Zoom? I'll take a motion.
To the,
Motion made, seconded to refer to the building department.
Councilor Dobos?
Yes.
Valakir?
yes.
McAuliffe? Kushein? Roy?
Yes.
Thanks, people.
I want to send it somewhere else. Send it.
I'm sorry, Councilor Laflamme.
No, I was just making, Dan said he did, is have the building department review the code, ordinance on, and if there any suggestions to it.
Would you like to add that?
You can add it tomorrow night if you want, or tonight is
You
fine.
could have the building department
Can add
just
it now, right,
review the
Sure.
code regarding.
Motion made and seconded to refer to the building department and request the building department review the code,
The ordinance.
the ordinance.
Of lighting.
Yeah, please call the roll.
Counselor Dobos?
Yes.
Valakir?
Yes.
McAuliffe? Kushein? Roy?
Yes.
That motion's favorable, 3-0. Thank you. Item number 2, be it ordered that Councilor Dobus be authorized to hold a public hearing regarding the Williams Park contamination dispute.
Put it back on the table.
I'm sorry, do I need a motion, Councilor?
Motion to remove it from the table and then a motion to place it on the floor for discussion.
I'll take a motion to, put item 2 back on the table. Motion made, seconded to put item number 2 back on the table. Please call the roll.
Counselor Dobos?
Yes.
Valakir?
Yes.
McAuliffe? Kushein? Roy?
Yes.
Item number 2, be it ordered that Councilor Dobus be authorized to hold a public hearing regarding the Williams Park contamination dispute. So I want to thank my constituents for coming out today. I'm sorry. Thank you for your patience. I want on the record, I did invite DPW and I did invite members of the law department. I'm disappointed that DPW does not have representation tonight. I'll go over the issue as I understand it. I believe initially I thought the council was told that they found an oil tank or something in that corner where Williams Park meets State Park, but they had said that they had found some petroleum fuel in the ground. I know the constituents are well aware of this, but they said that it's not spreading. So I guess when they put in the redundant water line, the contractor says they found some petroleum fuel. They said the soil's contaminated, but they know it's been there for a long time, decades, but they know it's not spreading. So the city is trying to take the position that it's been there a long time, that it's flowing from certain residential properties, and so the city's telling the state that it's not the city's responsibility to clean it up, from my understanding, and the city is trying to tell the state that it's not spreading, so they shouldn't have to clean up what's contaminated on city property. Is that correct, attorney?
Right. So I'm not the attorney that's actually handling it, but essentially the background on it is when the city several years ago was putting in the water redundant line, they came across some what they believe to be contaminated soil. So by law, they're required to notify the DEP that they've come across some contaminated soil. So that was done, and then a DEP opened its file on the case to say, okay, well, you found contaminated oil, we need to either remediate, we need to find out where it's coming from, and they have a whole litany of things that they're required to do. So as I understand it, the city has determined that the source of the contamination was coming from neighboring residential properties onto city property. So I believe what the city has done is they've retained an environmental expert to just file the necessary paperwork to try to determine whether or not the city was the source of the contamination or was it the residential abutters. And it appears to me from the limited information I have is that the determination by someone, I'm assuming it's DEP, but again, I don't want to make that representation, that the source of the contamination was not the city-owned property, but it was the residential properties. So I believe the city's taken the position that since the city's property wasn't the source of the contamination, they're essentially relieved from any liability for the contamination.
If I bought a property, and, you know, let's say there's oil from Westover or something like that, is that normal? I mean, how far underneath my property am I responsible for?
Yeah, I mean, typically, the problem here is that the homeowners, when they purchase a home, they don't typically do an investigation of the earth to determine whether or not there's contaminated soil or not. So I'm assuming it was a complete surprise to them, as it was to the city when they started digging up for the water redundancy line. But I guess the city, at least from what I understand, is saying, well, if we're not the source of the contamination, why would we then be responsible for cleaning up the neighboring properties? It appears as though that, and most likely well before any residential neighbors bought those properties, somebody who owned them prior to that contaminated the property, which leached onto city property. So I guess the city's position is, look, we've done our investigation. We followed DEP guidelines. We found the source, and it's not a city source. And therefore, we're not responsible for the cleanup on the neighboring properties.
Just for point of information, attorney, so why did the city hire that special environmental attorney?
Because you need to file certain paperwork with DEP to verify your investigation, what your investigation found. And our investigation found from our experts that the source, it wasn't a city source, that it actually sourced from residential properties. And in order to do that, you need to file certain paperwork with DEP. That's my understanding. It's my rough understanding of it. If I misinform the council, I'll certainly tell you otherwise. But that's my understanding. But again, I'm not the person in charge of it. That's what I've.
No, I understand that. I understand. And I'm sorry you're in this position.
Oh, fine.
I know, I'm sure I know you remember this guy. I asked you about it. I know there, somebody from the law department tried to get these residents to sign something so that the city could do testing on their property. I don't know if you can explain anything about that constituency.
Again, I'm not aware that it was the city law department who sent out the communications. I could be wrong. I think it was DEP. I'm sorry, Department of Public Works who sent out the request to gain access to the property. But again, Liz isn't here. I probably refer to her, and she's the director of DPW. She would have more information than I would. But from what I gather, all the law people I've spoken to, the communication hadn't come out in any form or fashion, other than potentially asking permission to get on someone's property for testing purposes.
Just want to be sure there's no one from DPW on Zoom or anything like that. Any city employees on Zoom? No.
But it may be in your best interest to postpone the meeting, but at least we have the neighbors, maybe they could tell us their version of events. And
yeah, I mean, I think that what's best, maybe if the residents want to come up and try to ask some questions to our attorney on the record. You know, I would definitely be in favor of postponing the meeting. You know, I apologize that DPW did not show up. You know, they were invited to the meeting. I'm not sure why city employees are not here, but I still encourage you to come up. I encourage the public to come up, state your name and address, and you know, tell the council about some of the frustration that you've gone through, some of the open-ended questions that you may have.
Check. Okay. Good evening, Chris Wannett, 17 Tardy Road, Chicopee, Mass.
And one at 17 Tardy Road.
So, thank you for those of you that showed up this evening. Derek, thank you for calling this meeting. I just have a couple questions. So how was it established that this oil leak contamination came from our properties, the residents' properties, if no testing was done on our properties?
From what I understand, some expert determined that it was downgraded, meaning it was coming from a source outside of the city property. But I can certainly get you that information. I'm happy to share any information we have. I just know what the conclusion was, but I'm happy to share those documents with you.
Right,
I don't have them, but I'll get them.
Thank you. And prior to the $30,000 or so that the city council approved for these legal, I guess, paperwork documentation that was filed with DEP, the mayor was on record saying that the city or the construction company did find a rusted oil tank at Williams Park, and all of a sudden this has changed, this perspective after the attorneys were hired. If somebody could comment about that.
I don't know anything about a rusted oil tank, but I'll be certainly happy to look into it. This is the first I've ever heard of it. But again, it may have been said, I just have no information on it. But if it's postponed, I'll certainly get that information to you and share it with you.
Thank you. The other thing is, I'm not sure if Derek, do you have the maps that were sent to us by our legal department? Mr. Marshall approached the 3 residents. I have it on camera. That was city, kind of threatening us with letters, wanting us to sign documentation to allow the city onto our property to do testing. This is also on file.
Law department.
Do you mind if I take a look at that?
And all this information is all information that was discussed the last time we were here several months ago during the city council meeting, or I believe, was it city council meeting?
Ago,
Yeah.
May 3rd, city council.
I believe we had 2 or 3 of those letters sent.
Did you speak, when he came to your door, did you speak to him directly?
Mr. Marshall came to the door with that document that the attorney is reading. He wanted me to sign for it. I said, I'm not signing, but I'll take it. And then I believe when we were here about a year ago, just to give a little bit more perspective, some of the city council members, Joel specifically said that the letter was sent, it was a form letter, I believe that's what it was stated as, and it was maybe a little bit too aggressive.
So just so you know, so what I'm looking at is I'm looking at a letter that was dated January 26th, 2022, and it looks like that letter came from our superintendent of public works. And I think that was the initial letter saying that there was some contamination located when we were doing our water redundancy line. The second letter, you are correct. Obviously, that did come from the law department. It was signed by a prior assistant city solicitor, Christine Pakula. That letter was, again, trying to get permission to come onto the property. Because I think one of the responsibilities of the party, including the city, is to determine where's the source. So I'm not exactly sure if they didn't gain access to your property, how they determined that it was a down gradient spill, but I'll certainly be in contact with you, and certainly I'll present it to the council at your next utilities committee meeting. But as far as service, I would suspect Marshall didn't come to your door. Somebody from the city definitely came.
Excuse me, he did. I have it recorded on the Ring doorbell device, so.
Marshall
Yes.
came?
Yes, sir. He came to our house, their house, and our next door neighbor's house. I have it. I can provide that to you as well if you would like that.
If you could describe, maybe like the behavior or whatever made you feel threatened when he came to your door.
So, when Mr. Marshall came to the door, I put the 2 pieces together. Clearly, it was something to do with something that had to do with Williams Park. Like I said, I'll take the document from you. I'm not signing anything. He left. Liz's information, the DPW, superintendent.
Right.
I gave her a call. I was the only one that called. And I just inquired, what is this information? Like, if the city's coming on our property to do testing, how are you going to do it? We have septic fields there. We have leach fields. What are you going to do? How are you going to come? Who's going to fix the property, right? We have all nice manicured lawns. If you're driving a, 10, 15-ton drilling rig on the property, that's going to do damage. No one wanted to own up anything to that. They're just saying, we have to do this based on state laws or whatever. Okay. I go to Liz, so how come how come only 3 neighbors and the neighbor's property that doesn't even abut Williams Park isn't included in this? And her words were, we don't want to get too many neighbors involved right now. Okay. So, just kind of the transparency and the communication, kind of shady. I don't like that kind of communication, especially as a taxpayer of the city. I know we all represent the entire city, but we are part of that equation as well. Mr. Attorney, there's also, if you see these 2 maps attached to the letter?
Yes, yep.
All right. I'm not a rocket scientist, but there's 3 wells on the map. On the corner of Lord Terrace, inside Williams Park, and on the corner of our property, which is 17 Tardy Road, and 19 Lord Terrace. And on that map, there's a yellow line kind of showing where they found oil.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also on that map showing underground flow of water, correct? In blue?
It appears as though that's what it is.
And in your opinion, how do that flow, where's that flow coming from? Is it coming from Lord Terrace? Is it coming directly from one of the neighbors?
This blue line here that's going horizontal with your properties?
The blue squiggly lines coming. The blue squiggly lines coming from Lord Terrace, down in a kind of like in a southeast direction.
This here. Liz or John or somebody.
Combination within the yellow.
I think what we need to do is stand by.
That would be nice.
That'd be nice. So, but just to put it on record, okay? Just if you agree with me, the water flow appears like it's coming from Lord Terrace and going southeast into the park.
We don't.
Well, okay, so if that's a reasonable interpretation, there's no contamination to the right of where the well is on the corner of our property in Williams Park where they did drilling, and water's coming from the northwest. How are we being included in this situation? And how are the neighbors to the left of Lord Terrace not here today? Why are they not being involved?
If I could, I got Liz, the DPW, she'll zoom in.
Mhm.
I think we should have her zoom in, at least get some out of her, so I'll have her zoom in right now.
Yeah, it'd be nice if representation
She
was here.
misunderstood you, Derek. She thought you were gonna ask for a meeting tonight. Let me just say, please zoom in.
Yeah, I apologize to my constituents that, we had trouble getting some people to the meeting tonight.
No, she's gonna zoom in right now.
So just so I'm clear, so my responsibility to you tonight is gonna be to provide you information on how it was determined it was a down gradient spill. Secondly, was to talk about a rusted oil tank that was spoken about by Mayor View or Mayor Koss? Mayor View? City Council meeting?
It was a meeting in this room because there was, issues with the main room due to a lightning or something, a storm.
Yeah.
And then
Do we have an attorney that's on handling this case?
it would be Lou Moore,
Outside vendor?
right,
person.
outside
Okay.
counsel. So Lou Moore is he's the environmental expert that we retain when they have these types of situations. So that would be the person that we need to, I will speak to and get some information on. And potentially the superintendent at DPW will have that information, we'll see. Because she's been working closely with him.
Did the city threaten to sue you at any point? I know there was some panic in the neighborhood when this first started.
Well, I spoke with Liz, DPW, they did mention litigation, that the state would come after us in the
Do you
letter.
mind if I read that in the record? Is that
Sure.
okay? Dear Mr. and Mrs. Winnott, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 21E, the Massachusetts Contingency Plan, you may be responsible for reimbursement of environmental response costs incurred at Williams Park, Chicopee, Massachusetts. William Park is owned by the city of Chicopee and dedicated as parkland pursuant to Article 97. The purpose of this notification is, again, to request access to your property to determine the responsibility for hazardous material contamination among the parties without litigation. Specifically, Phase 1 testing has revealed that a property which directly abuts the park is the source of contamination. This potentially includes your property. The city understands this may be a hindrance to you. However, it is pertinent that you cooperate with additional soil and groundwater assessments. Your failure to respond to this letter will result in the request of a court order to obtain access to perform further testing at 17 Tardy Road. If it is determined that the source of contamination is from your property and you fail to agree to pay your share of the environmental response costs, you may be liable to the city for litigation costs and attorney fees. Kindly forward a copy of this letter to your homeowner and title insurance carriers. Additionally, please forward any copies of reports in your possession concerning soil or groundwater sampling investigation or assessment that have occurred at your property. Thanks for your anticipated cooperation. Very truly yours, Chrissy Pacula. That's the first letter. This definitely concerned me when they first brought this to me. I do feel this is an aggressive letter. That's why I was pretty alarmed. I know I spoke to Dan about this several times over the last year. I just want the committee and the other counselors in the room to understand this. Since none of the residents agreed for this testing, the city has not sued them, to my knowledge. But they've clearly threatened it in this letter.
And also to put on record that our banks, mortgage banks, were included in that communication.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Counselor.
Can I borrow it? I'm gonna go see if I can downstairs. Have to have it on record.
If you make a few copies, Counselor, that's okay.
We have to have it on record.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, you make a couple copies. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. We're waiting for the DPW director to come on Zoom, and she can answer more questions after that. Are there any other concerns you want to mention before we get DPW?
The law department did not want to speak to him. They said they would only take his inquiry in writing, that they would not speak to us, not answer any of our questions. And then later we went to the city council meeting and did input. That's our issue.
And that also goes for the mayor's office. I called, left a message, haven't heard a phone call yet from the mayor.
Yeah, and I want to point out that I did try to get the testing data for you guys, and I've never been given that data, and that includes a FOIA request. So it's just putting that on the record. Any other counselors want to address these constituents? If you don't mind, if we can hear from the other resident, and then I'll give you a second chance to speak once we get DPW on the line. Okay, no problem.
What's her address? What's her address?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can we get your name and address real quick? I'm sorry.
Lori Schillinger, 19 Lord Terrace.
Thank you. Any other?
He's getting her on.
So was your experience similar to their experience in that you received the same amount of letters and then had a visit as well? We did receive the same letters. I wasn't home at the time where the gentleman approached our house. My husband was not here today.
Okay, she's on.
It was the same experience. Thank you for being here.
Liz is on now.
Liz, can you hear me? Liz, can you hear us? I was just connecting to audio.
Sure, she can hear you.
Liz, can you hear us? Liz, can you hear us?
Hold on, now I can.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Liz. We've been talking about this for a couple of minutes. I appreciate you zooming in. Can you go over for us the this Williams Park contamination dispute, how it started, where it is now? Just kind of describing, how the contamination was found, what testing you've done, what testing that you've requested.
Mr. Chairman, could you let her know you read the letter into the record that she sent out?
Yeah, we read a letter into the record that the law department sent out to residents initially a year ago. Basically saying that they want to do testing on residents' property, or they're gonna sue them, right? They're gonna obtain a court order and take them to court. So that letter was read into the record. From my understanding, Liz, I try to go over it briefly. I know they put in the redundant water line. Then there was some contamination found. I thought early on at some meeting it was mentioned that possibly an oil tank was found, but then later on it was said that it's petroleum oil. Is that correct?
Let me,
yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, all right, during the redundant water main project, when they were excavating to install the pipe, they found riveted metal, scraps of riveted metal, which were presumed to be possibly from some sort of tank. Due to that, we have to file then with the DEP what's been found. So then time goes by, and they then require for us to do some investigative work due to that notification to them. So we did some borings and some testing, and we found that there was a contamination of a petroleum type product. And when that was found, we had to then expand our area, because then you have to determine the limits of the possible contamination. And when we did the initial, when we did that with the borings and taking samples of the groundwater and such, we found that it led us to the adjacent properties. And that's where we were. We filed the testing and sampling with DEP, and they were requiring that we continue determining the limits and possibly locate the source. When we sent out the letter, I don't believe it was threatening. It's been a while, but I don't believe it was threatening as far as lawsuit. It's that we had an obligation and we had deadlines to meet for reporting, and that we needed to get access to properties to continue delineating. But when we did receive very little response or support from the adjacent properties, we then, I don't know if you recall, we filed for down gradient property status, which which puts us in a position where we're now not obligated to continue determining the complete limits of this contamination, and that our liability pretty much ends at where we completed it.
Thank you. Liz, I'm going to open it up to some of the residents. I think they have some questions for you.
Okay.
Hi, Liz. Good evening. This is Chris from 17 Tardy Road. I'm not sure how you're saying you didn't have cooperation. I believe I called you a week later after receiving one of the letters, and wanted more information. And I asked why other neighbors were not included in this litigation. And I believe you said you guys didn't want to raise too much attention yet in this matter. So I did call we were willing to speak with the city on this matter during the city council meeting. We also said we never said we wouldn't allow anybody permission on our property. We wanted to know what would happen, how it would happen, who would restore our properties. We were never given an answer.
So I did speak with you on the phone. And I had told you that I had suggested that you speak to an attorney just to make sure that you were comfortable with that, allowing us access to your property. I think we even talked about how we would access your property, and you were concerned about your leach field adjacent to your house. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
To some degree. Mhm.
And we didn't
so
want,
why
we
would
weren't
I?
notified. Oh,
Okay.
sorry. I think there's a delay.
Oh, go ahead.
And we didn't notify all the residents adjacent in your neighborhood because we were focusing primarily on the properties that were seemed to be upstream of where we found our contamination. So we weren't notifying everybody in the neighborhood. It was limited just to those that we thought to be upstream.
Sure. So do you have that map with you by any chance where I could ask you a couple questions?
I don't, but I have a fairly good memory of that. You're the one with the
So if you could
large
comment.
arborvitaes. Sorry.
Yeah, if you could comment where when the testing was done, where the water flow was coming from, what direction compared to Lord Terrace?
What do you mean water flow? Like the way groundwater
Underground
moves?
water flow. Mhm.
Yes. So it comes. I believe that if you're looking at the map, it should be oriented in north-south, right? And standard orientation, where
Sure.
Lord Terrace and Tardy are north of the park.
Yes.
And that's kind of the way that the groundwater moves there. And which is why it was determined that the contamination is downstream, where we initially found it in the park, it's downstream because that is the way the groundwater moves. Like Tardy is off of Lord Terrace, correct? And it moves in a southerly direction.
So according to the map, to me, it looks like it's coming from the northwest heading southeast, possibly.
I know that it's coming from the north moving south. I'm not sure in which direction, but I believe at the reason that it was not determined that it would be coming from the western side of Lord Terrace is because the contamination based on the borings does not go it seemed to favor the east side. So that's why we were focusing on the east side.
Oh, I'm trying to analyze this. On the map, the underground water is coming from the northwest, so the two houses to the left of Lord Terrace should be included in this matter because that petroleum, whatever is flowing underground, in theory, it could be coming from the northwest of Lord Terrace.
Well, because
how could it? Oh.
Sorry, but because the borings found led us directly to, I believe, your property and the property on Lord Terrace, you would continue to move in that direction. If it was found that once we were on your property, it continued to move north or west, then we would follow that. It was kind of a process. We're not going to just jump and start sampling in locations we're not certain of. You continue to inch moving upstream, finding the full delineation, because it could be coming from your side, it could be coming from their side. We don't know unless we do the sampling, but we actually don't have to anymore.
Sure. So why is the house on 33 Tardy Road included in this when there are two houses from the park?
33 Tardy, are they adjacent to Lord Terrace? I'm trying to think of the numbers.
They are
There
not.
was three.
They're on the corner of Lord Terrace.
We sent three. We notified three properties.
Correct. So 33 Tardy Road is on the corner of Lord Terrace and Tardy, which is a house away from Williams Park, 2 houses.
Yeah,
And also, just moving on a little quickly, so there's a well that was done on the corner of 19 Lord Terrace and our property where the arborvitaes are. And according to that well, there was no contamination found. And there's a yellow line to the west of that, sharp, kind of straight yellow line where the contamination is to the left of that. And if the underground water flow is coming from the northwest, how is 17 Tardy Road part of this equation?
so I don't have the map in front of me. And so I can't really answer that based on the description that you're giving. But I do know that our consultant, our environmental consultant, are the ones who decided who needed to be notified. And so we base it on their expertise in this. If I had the map in
Liz,
front of me, I'd probably be able to better answer that, but
Liz, if I can ask a couple questions here. Is it possible for us to get the Tigan bond data that the city received from the testing?
yeah, of course they can. Yeah.
Because I've never been given that data. I know I asked for it multiple times, not to you maybe, but to Marshall. I've asked multiple times, and I believe I even submitted a FOIA request to Marshall for that data. I've never been given it, so I'm going to request that we postpone this to the call of the chair and that data be presented at a future meeting. How much would a boring
Derek,
test cost? Just
Derek,
yeah.
would it just be easier if the resident, I have the report. If the residents want to come, I can give them the report. It's public information. I'm not sure about your FOIA request, but I have that information.
Yeah, I mean, that would definitely be helpful. I'm sure the residents would want it. I would definitely like to see it for sure. I appreciate that a lot. Yeah, I'm not sure if you could send that out, or if it could be emailed to me. I can get it to residents. Liz, just out of curiosity, how much does it cost to do one of these boring tests where I'm guessing they drill down and test the soil?
To be honest with you, I don't know the exact number. I could get that for you, but I don't know the exact number. And I mean, if you're asking in relation to like what a resident would pay versus the city, I don't know how they come up with that. Ours was included in our consulting fees.
No, I understand. I'm sorry to put you on the spot. Do you think it'd be more than 10,000, for example? Just a total guess.
I don't even want to guess. I honestly don't even want to guess because I'm not sure. I mean,
okay. One last question. Just say that the city or the state came in and got a grant to clean up all the contaminated soil. What would the cost be significant, or do you have any guess on like how much it would cost to totally clean up the so-called contaminated soil like in Williams Park?
Oh my God. If we were to do like a recovery well system, I mean, I don't know. It depends on the extent and how much and if what the source is. But it could be, I mean, if you think of, I mean, Delta Park is probably an extreme situation. That's millions and millions and millions of dollars. But I mean, I can't imagine something like this would cost that. I think that with DEP, you have to determine the limits and what the potential is for it to continue to migrate in the groundwater. It may be that you don't have to, you just have to monitor it. You don't actually remove it, you just monitor it. But I'm not an environmental science professional, the licensed LSP. So I'm not really the right person to ask. I know as much as they share with me.
Thank you.
No.
I'm sorry, could I just ask 2 more questions?
Yes, please.
Really briefly. So how much did the city spend so far on consultation fees and all the drilling? If we could get a figure on that, that'd be lovely to know. And what is the current status of this matter? I know it was filed with DEP. Has DEP received it? Is DEP reviewing it? What is the next step of DEP to the residents and to the city? It seems like to the city has nothing to do with anymore, it sounds like.
Well, no, so we filed for downgradient status. So once that's approved, we don't have to do further investigation. And if we don't do further investigation, you know, there really is nothing that's mandated, I don't believe, on the residents, on the adjacent property owners, until you were to, I think probably do some work on your property and uncover, that there may be contamination on your property. They can't, I don't think they can really enforce anything unless they have a definitive of whether or not there is something on your property. And I'm looking at this, one of the counselors, Counselor Laflamme sent me a picture of the plan, and I'm looking at this, and it's kind of hard to see, but can somebody confirm to me over by MW5, is that 77.6 as a groundwater elevation?
Yes, 77.6, it looks like.
Yes.
So groundwater is actually moving from Tardy Lane this way. So if you look, it's 77.6, there's a 77.5 and a 77.45. So it's moving in the direction of like monitoring well 5 to monitoring well 3.
Yeah. Did you hear that, Liz?
Could you
I'm
hear-
sorry.
No, I didn't hear that. No.
So
MW2.
So MW2 specifically, I'm just speaking for 17 Tardy Road, then why is Tardy Road being included in this if everything of that well is to the west of it, northwest?
No, I was using that based on the grades provided for the groundwater flow. And if you look at the grades, so it's moving from Tardy to Lord Terrace. It's not the other way around. So they didn't go further with their groundwater elevations, but because they already have, there's enough information to already show the way that it's moving. So it is, so your property is the one with the pool?
Yes.
They're worried about being sued.
So, and I believe boring number 24 is definitely shows contamination in it. So, or maybe not boring 24, but monitoring well number 2, I believe does. And so when you look at boring number 21, if you look at the way groundwater moves and you draw a perpendicular line from that grade up, you're going to end up like over by your pool in your house. So even though it may not be your entire property, it could be passing over your property.
Maybe because of the way the picture was taken.
But you know, if you wanted to come by DPW, I can kind of sit with you and explain to you, and I can give you the information from the report.
I mean, so in the best world scenario, DEP gets this, reviews it. There's no further contamination going outwards in any direction. No definitive conclusion is made where it's coming from. No one's digging. No one's doing any extra work. It just stays closed.
Yeah, if you so we have the monitoring wells in place, but if you were to look at the results, the contamination that was found is old contamination. It's not like a new source. The type of petroleum they found was kind of like an older type of petroleum that the scientists are familiar with, and that's how they classify it. So it's not like a new source where, okay, we need to locate it. It was from whatever that, it's likely that it's from whatever that property was used for before it was developed. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I believe there's records of it that even.
Sorry.
No, my apologies. So my understanding is that all that property used to belong to Westover as well, right? Is it possible to date how old that petroleum was, since that neighborhood, those houses were established in mid-80s?
I'd have to look at the phase 1 and phase 2 report would outline a lot of that information because they do a historical analysis of a property. And it was utilized like as an, I think, archery and maybe like a gravel bank before. There had, you know, when you go back, they pull all of the old ortho photos and of what the property was, and they look at the transfers of ownership and everything to see if there was a use prior that could have been a source. And that is all outlined in the report.
Thank you. I think if we got a lot of those questions answered, I think we could come to some kind of conclusion where the neighbors don't feel like the city's, you know, coming after us, washing their hands clean and saying good luck with DEP. That's the way I feel.
And you shouldn't, I would,
Yeah,
I would hope that you didn't feel that way, because we definitely, the way we were looking at it was more of like, let's try to figure this out, and the city would assist with the investigation part. But, you know, and I remember telling you, you know, like have somebody look at it just so that you feel comfortable from a legal perspective, because I would never want anybody entering into something that they didn't feel comfortable doing or felt pressured doing it. I think it was, then I didn't really hear anything, and I didn't hear anything from any of the other property owners. Neither did I or the planning department. And so that's when we did, you know, we decided to send out a letter, and then we moved forward with the downgradient designation. But we can talk further.
Yeah, this is what I'd like to do, if possible, is if you could get us the testing data from the contractor, Tigan Bond. I think that would be helpful. I think I'm going to ask the committee to make a motion to postpone the call of the chair, and then once myself and the residents have a chance to review the data, if we have another meeting, we'll try to get Mass DEP here and Tigan Bond here if possible, if they're willing to. I know we can't order them, but I can, you know, I'll call them and invite them, and we can have a meeting more about the data. I'm not sure if that's favorable to the residents.
I just have one question for you. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Liz. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Derek, I wouldn't involve regulatory agency at this point, because you don't want to make something kind of bigger than it might need to be at that time. You might kind of raise some concern, but we could sit with, you know, I would make sense to have Tigan Bond and Lee, who from planning, who has a lot of experience with this type of stuff, as well as maybe law department, to talk about all of this.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you're gonna put it to a call of the chair, or to postpone it to the call of the chair, and these folks are willing, if they're willing, I'd like to see if Liz could meet. She's willing to meet with them, because that would be a lot of. And then when they come to the next meeting with us, they'll have some to go back and forth with. But at least meet with them if she's willing to do that. With the paperwork and everything.
Well, I'm okay with that. I think we should postpone to the call of the chair. If no meeting's needed afterward, we'll just let it die.
No, I would still have your meeting, but at least they'll have back and forth of what they're doing. They might get more information just sitting with her.
Yeah, because I've never seen the data. I've asked for it. I've never seen the data. I don't know. You know, if I haven't gotten it, they obviously haven't gotten it. You know.
Yeah.
And I just have one more question regarding this downgraded status. Is there an ETA as to when, you know, you're going to hear back from DEP?
I'll have to look and see where that's at. I can't answer that right this second. I'm not sure.
And once you hear back, or let's say that they do approve this downgraded status, are the residents going to be notified? Like, do we need to worry that if we want to sell our house at some point, that, you know, that there was contamination abutting our property? Like, what do we need to do about a situation like that?
So
when on the letter it's requesting us to talk to our insurance company and our mortgage company and all this stuff, like, why do we have to disclose this information to them?
Technically, legally, you're supposed to. So when you're selling a house, you're supposed to disclose any of that information for possible future liability. In my experience, I know with purchasing of properties that have that potential, the buyer would probably want to do like a phase one report where that would all get discovered anyways. Unfortunately, we can't take back that we found this during that project. It had to be reported and now it'll always be public information.
But there's no consensus that this is coming from any of their properties. So you guys just did us undue harm. The city has done us undue harm and saying, you got to take care of it, talk to your attorneys, waste thousands of dollars on litigation, because that's what the city's doing, you know? That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I'm not
Any
sure.
other, I'm sorry, any other counselors want to make a comment about this, issue? I'm sorry, Counselor Balkier, please.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious, how many, neighbors and how many?
I believe it's 3 households. Is that correct, Liz?
As of right now, we have only narrowed it down to 3 because we, we're basing it on the data that we had collected from Williams Park along the property line. I'm not hearing
Any
you
other
guys.
comments you'd like to make? I'll take a motion to postpone to the call of the chair.
Make a motion to postpone to the call of the chair.
Motion made, seconded to postpone to the call of the chair.
Councilors Dobos,
Yes.
Valakir,
Yes.
McAuliffe, Kushein, Roy.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead, Councilor Roy.
Definitely feel for you guys. I would feel the same way if I were in your shoes. I'm hoping that we can come to a conclusion of the problem. You've got to get information from Liz, you have to get more information from the lawyer, and hopefully we can resolve this, in a good manner for you. Good luck.
It's unfortunate that the city council $30,000 in litigation.
Yeah.
Thank you, Liz, for coming on Zoom. If you could send me that data, and I'll make sure that the residents get it.
But Derek, I'd like to be able to sit down and explain to them, what's in there so that it's not, you're not trying to spend a lot of time figuring it out. So for anybody.
Okay, no problem. I can connect you to them as well. President, is that okay if I connect you with Liz? Yeah, Liz, I'll connect you with the residents. I'll give you their contact information.
Okay.
I appreciate you coming to the meeting. The motion is 3-0 favorable to the call of the chair. So for the residents, we can call this back to utilities at any time through this year.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
My motion,
I just make sure that he's going to make a copy of that letter. Just make sure you get your copy back.
accept the minutes of July 13th and July 25th.
I think it's July 11th. Let me see.
So I just said, didn't I? Did I say July 11th? July 11th and July 25th.
Motion made, seconded to approve the minutes of July 11th, 2022, and July 25th, 2022. Please call the roll.
Councilors Dobos,
Yes.
Valakir,
Yes.
McAuliffe, Kushein, Roy.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn. Motion made, seconded to adjourn. Please call the roll.
Councilors Dobos,
Yes.
Valakir,
Yes.
McAuliffe, Kushein, Roy.
Yes.